VEGA schools, talk about what they're doing with student voice in their schools. And then at the end, we're going to divide into maybe 2 groups and discuss these statements that I've put that hopefully will have different opinions from the students and the adults to have that contrast, and at the end talk about them and see what the differences are in opinions. And then that's it for today. So, Frederika, if you would like to introduce student voice, please.
Hey everyone, so I'm Frederika. I'm sorry it's confusion that I've put Kraj written beneath me, but I'm just using her account today. And I'm part of the research team at HundrED and worked on our recent report looking at what youth globally think needs to change in education, as well as what stakeholders deem as needs for changing in education globally. At HundrED, we've really tried to focus in the research report and in our work this year on making sure that youth voice is present and that we really try and incorporate it in everything that we do. I myself research children's rights a lot, particularly the United Nations Convention on the Rights of the Child, which has an Article 12, which is about student voice and the need for students to be heard in the equation of many different aspects of their lives, but also particularly within education, which is what we're focusing on here today. And I think, as Jordy elaborated before, students may sometimes be given the space to talk about what they think they'd like to change in education or what they'd like to get from education. However, it's one thing talking, but not necessarily is the platform allowing them to be heard and for changes to be made. And that's what we're really looking at this year, is innovations that are addressing what students want and what they need and are taking that into account, as well as innovations that are actually being led by young people and making the changes in education that they really are passionate about. And our research report, it was really interesting to gain such a wide understanding from a global perspective of what different students thought in education and how much that actually was different to what stakeholders and I guess adults were deeming their needs to be. So it'd be great at some point if you have a chance to look at least the executive summary of the report, because I know it's quite a big one. But if you have any more questions about the report as we go on, please let me know and I'll be happy to answer them. Or if you have any email questions, then please go ahead and email me. It's my name, Frederika@HundrED.org. So thank you, and I'll pass on to Isabella now. So I'll stop sharing, and Isabella, you can share your presentation.
Okay, thank you. And thank you very much for the invitation. I'm very honored to be here and today. And I'm from Brazil and from São Paulo, and I'm a lawyer and the advocacy director of an institution called Alana Institute. And we do a lot of advocacy job in children's rights area there. And today I'm going to talk about children and adolescents' right to have their voice heard. And in order for children and adolescents to have their right to education fully realized, they need to become protagonists in their educational process in informal and formal contexts, and must hear their voices in all possible ways. International laws covering children and adolescents' rights and stress the importance of educating children and adolescents on their rights. All these laws are, however, not enforced very well. So they can become truly effective. Information and knowledge still needs to reach a big part of society. This Article 29 from the Convention is written here in a child-friendly language organized by UNICEF. And it says, your education should help you use and develop your talents and abilities. It should also help you learn to live peacefully, protect the environment, and respect other people. Informing children and adolescents on their own rights is absolutely crucial for their education in order to promote conditions for them to grow and develop with dignity and respect for their fundamental human rights. When they don't know that, they become even more vulnerable to the violations affecting them and are also weaker in demanding the enforcement of the laws and in assisting according to their capabilities and developmental stages to ensure their observance. By being aware of their rights, it is possible for children and adolescents to have greater engagement in their own education, according to their age and suitable level of participation to their stage of development. Students' voices are the most powerful ones since they are the major stakeholders who suffer the most from the mismatch between the school's environment and the real world out of classroom. And engagement is directly related to the opportunity for children and adolescents to have a voice in school community, a right which is also legally provided to them, and in the global context is covered by Article 12, as Frederika said, in the UN Convention on the Rights of the Child. Giving children and adolescents a voice, especially to younger ones, does not simply mean to ask questions and obtain answers, but to present and to listen to what they have to say, not only by their words, but also by other non-verbal forms of communication, such as their actions, expressions, plays, songs, stories, drawings, sculptures, and even costumes. Listening to children and adolescents sensitively is essential so they can be truly listened to and so that they are considered relevant stakeholders in the decision-making of public policies concerning them and their education. And an emblematic example of this that occurred in Brazil between the years 2015 and 2016, when the demonstrations and occupations known as Secondary Education Spring took place at public schools in Brazil, led by high school students who were dissatisfied with governmental measures impacting public policies of education. They claimed precisely greater participation in school-related decisions, subverting the assumption that they would be at school simply as passive agents who receive information and affirming their roles as subjects of their own learning. The movement began in states of Goiás and São Paulo, where more than 200 schools were occupied by students, and resulted in the resignation of the Secretary of Education in São Paulo and in the suspension of the reorganization plan that had been proposed by the government without a previous debate with the adolescents. After that, the movement expanded to the state of Paraná, when more than 800 schools were occupied by students, questioning a legislative proposal for austerity measures and for a change to the federal constitution in Brazil in order to freeze spending on social programs, including education, for more than 20 years. They also opposed the flexibilization of their curriculum, and the conservative movement called Escola Sem Partido, non-partisan school, which has spread across municipalities here in the country, which they aim to silence teachers on issues such as gender, politics, and religion, and which has been heavily criticized by United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights. Education doesn't take place only in classrooms. Other informal education spaces are equally relevant. Media, for example, is a tool to be taken into account. It shapes children and adolescents' subjectivity all over the world, often in a generalized way that disregards ethnic, cultural, social, religious, and political difference. As a society, we should consider media to be an important educational environment, and from there, seek to guarantee that television and digital media observe the best interests of children and adolescents when addressing them. And here I have some data related to Brazil. And these figures tell us a lot about how children and adolescents here acquire knowledge and shape their subjectivities beyond formal education here in the country. Of course, the data illustrates the reality of a specific country, but can also be representative of the ambiguous experience of children and adolescents globally, in the sense that they are increasingly more connected with an avalanche of information around them, living in a world full of surprises with a formal school that needs to improve education and all other challenges of our century, such as climate change and social inequality. When it comes to both digital media and TV programs, they do not always have content specifically designed for children and adolescents. Most often, they contain instead, at least here in the country, in Brazil, inappropriate content, such as policy programs that flagrantly violate human rights by propagating and inciting violent, discriminatory, and abusive acts. Moreover, the content is generally filled with advertising and commercial messages, which are already considered abusive, and in some countries, as here in Brazil, even illegal when addressed to children under the age of 12 years old. So all children and adolescents are part of the same global community, and we are all responsible for their care and well-being. And my children and adolescents, yours and theirs, are all our children and adolescents of the planet, and the power of today and the hope of the humanity of tomorrow. So that's are my contributions for the discussion for today. Thank you.
Wow, thank you, Isabella. That was really interesting and powerful, what you said. That was interesting. Thank you. So now, Elliot, would you please tell us about big picture learning?
Yeah, and more. Thanks, everybody, for the opportunity to talk with everybody a little bit. Our work, we have not just a couple of hundred schools around the world, we only have them as proof points to influence education in the places that we are. And our design that we started many, many years ago, but as big picture 23 years ago, starts with the interest choices of each and every student and their voices both in and outside of school. If you go to our website, you'll see students and what they're interested in and how the school connects those interests to the world outside of school through peers as well as through adult mentors. So they're both learning from peers and learning from their elders, and that work is managed and facilitated and guided, and important word, we are with students, not doing something to them all the time. Schools are places basically where we put young people and they can do little else than what we expect them to do. There's not much free ranging going on in schools, but in the world outside of schools, completely different. There was a friend who wrote an ethnography called Landscapes of Betrayal, Landscapes of Joy, where he followed students in a California high school for a year and found out that the landscape inside the school almost totally betrayed them, where they were bored, disinterested, and really had, as one of our students early on who came to our school said, I have no say and no way to get say, and that's why I'm here. And then when they went outside and school was over, all of a sudden their landscape changed to the interests that they had, and it was a landscape of joy. A real good lesson that people haven't paid much attention to in schools, with few exceptions. So if you go to our schools, you'll find that every school has their own learning, every student has their own learning plan. Every student has a voice at the table 4 times a year around things that interest them and the choices that they're making to study and develop. It's one of the catchphrases if you walk into our schools and I say, is this your work or is this schoolwork? And if they say it's schoolwork, we know we've got something wrong going on. But most of the time they're saying it's their work, and their work has got adults with them, because many times the students' center is at the edge of their competency. They're kind of really big on risk-taking, and we don't want anything to happen. That's why there's adults around. This is an old story of Icarus, flying too close to the sun and no adults paying attention to what he was doing. So adults have a role with youth voice, to observe, as was pointed out, and to listen, both verbally and non-verbally, and then to participate with them and pay attention and provide an environment where they're engaged and they're learning. One of the things that's very important to us is that you do what matters to you. And by that, what matters to you has to be productive, useful to the student, the school, the society, their family, their community. If you looked at the work that our students do, you'd find that both in their social ventures of the creation of not-for-profits, entrepreneurial ventures where they're developing their own businesses, and the work that they do through internships and travel and take in courses outside the domain of our school that are both online and face-to-face. And we're very, very big on not just what you know. Schools certify on a what, and they forget who's in front of them. I give out a diploma and a certification, and rarely is that connected to a who you know, and who and what are powerful learning situations, especially outside of school, where information and knowledge is transferred through the wink of an eye, imitation, tacit learning, all those pieces in a situation where the problems are real that need to be reckoned with and sometimes solved. None of that counts inside of a school for the most part, with few exceptions in the broader scheme of things. So getting students out, and our students are out in high school 2 days a week if they're in elementary and middle school. They're out after school where we're with them and follow them on the weekends, where their families are engaged and their families are part of that learning plan meeting. And all of a sudden things change. And sometimes those pieces, and I could give you literally hundreds of examples, are students dealing with difficult situations and traumas in their life that are their interests, not necessarily a career interest. It's an interest in getting somebody better, getting themselves better, and working through their own problems. And then they go on and know that the school, our schools and others, there's a level of trust around what they're telling us and what they want to do. And that's our job to connect the academic side of things to and through those interests. So we've been doing this for decades now, probably have about 10,000 students a year in our schools. And we have a broader influence out there, which is really what our work is, to change public education in and around the United States and around the world. And it's done most of the time through the voices of our students. If you had gone to our international conference in Atlanta, the students led and ran the conference. They ran the advisories that were composed of adults. They ran and led the Leaving to Learn activities that were around everybody's interests. And they were the MCs of the conference. So we take this pretty seriously, and we know as adults that we have a role with students. So I'll stop there and say, if you go to bigpicture.org, you'll see our students in a variety of different landscapes, testifying at legislatures, at theater, in their schools, outside of school, with their voices heard, listened to by other adults. So if you go, yeah, thank you for putting that up. I just didn't want to work the gizmo here and talk at the same time. But if you go there, yeah, you'll find that we have lots of materials and guides that can help people in their own context work through some of that. And we're happy to have conversations with anybody all over. So thanks a lot. Hope I can add to the conversation here today, and more importantly, make the changes that are necessary out there for many, many more students.
Well, thank you, Elliot. I'm a huge fan of big picture learning personally. At the HundrED Innovation Summit, after talking to Dennis, and he was telling me all about big picture learning. I just ended up crying because I was so inspired by what the school is doing in schools.
Well,
So thank you for sharing.
Dennis and I have been doing this for 46 years.
Wow.
They're a little bit older than most of the people in the room. That's all right. It takes a long time, obviously, to take your words, your feet in the mouth, and put them together. It's just happening out there all the time. It's just not happening in schools. And I really stick to that phrase of my friend Herb Childress, that we betray students through the landscapes that we've developed inside of schools. So we'll stop there. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, Kyle, would you please share about VEGA schools?
Hello, everybody. I'm Kyle Edwards. I'm head of school, actually one of 3 heads of school at the same building, primary education school in Coldwell, India. The school is only about 3 years old. Private education, at least in Delhi NCR, the National Capital Region, is quite a big business industry. A lot of that has to do with the government educational norms of India being quite low, causing a high demand for really businesses to come in and start private schools. We are one of the unconventional schools in our area, where not only are we taking an approach to education that is project-based learning. I think a lot of these people in this chat will understand project-based learning or inquiry-based approach to education, which is quite the antithesis of the conventional norm or rote learning model that you would typically see in the Asian nations. So the first thing, and I would say the hardest thing that we have to do based off our region, really is the hiring of teachers. We don't have the endowment or the pay scale, the pay grade to recruit many international teachers, and we want to remain an available option for many of the working families of a higher socioeconomic class of program. So many of the multinational corporations that are based in India, many of them for the Delhi National Capital Region, are within reach of us. So those parents' children go to our school. The most challenging element we have is the hiring of teachers. So how student voice becomes such an integral piece is that they become part of the hiring process, which is a very unconventional norm for a recent graduate teacher of could be in India, a bachelor, a DL.Ed degree or a B.Ed degree, coming in from a conventional method where they themselves have probably gone to the rote learning curriculum style, and now you're having a class 6 child or a class 5 child in your interview process. Well, myself, along with some of the leadership staff, help coach those students into asking questions that they deem important in that hiring process. And many times we get the best gauge on the emotional intellect, really, the emotional quotient of a teacher through the child's voice and vision. That would not only just happen in a small group space in the collaboration room of an interview, but also in the learning environment itself, as well as in formal areas like cafeterias, stairwells, or outside the school, where socialization aspects are quite normal. But it really throws a big curveball or a bend for a teacher when you have a student who's part of your review interview process and hiring. The second thing that I think is very unique right now, at least for us in our area, is aside from just the hiring process, students are often a part of the evaluation process, the review process of our faculty. And that doesn't just go for the teaching staff, but all the way up through academic coordinators and heads of school. So this comes not only from a survey method, but it's a true 360 evaluation process where the student gives voice and opinion based off a rubric on their thoughts of their own class teacher. And they go through that with the learning leader. For us, it's a learning leader, or the teacher themselves, which is many times, you know, it's again, it's a situational environment. So it's the antithesis of the bureaucracy that typically you find in a traditional school setup, where you have a principal or a head of school or an academic assistant principal, an AP, and then down the rung. Having that flat structure where, of course, a student is part of that process is a very unique feature of our school. Aside from, you know, you want to promote, we as an institution want to promote questions, obviously an inquiry-based model as our curriculum. We want children to ask questions. And I think that at least my experiences here, my own personal work, this is my fourth continent now working in education. And I've been here in India for 5 years. You know, the conventional thought process of not being able to question the society is a challenge that we face, at least in the NCR, National Capital Region of Delhi. And many children are already thought of what they will become in terms of their family or societal norms, the expectations of their family. So it's not about creating mini rebels to say to mom and papa, I'm not going to be an engineer or a doctor or a lawyer, but I can do something that I am interested in, which is typically maybe in music, the arts, maybe sports, giving that space for freedom to have conversations with parents about what I enjoy, what I love, and what my interests are very unique for our students. So those conversations also take place in what we call student-led conferences, or SLCs, where children would go through their goal sets, not even just from their own academics or learning process, but also in the coaching of their own parents about sharing with them what their interests are as individuals. Many times, in a high technological world we're living in today, many of the parents of our children work at times 10, 12-hour days, and you know, the nanny or the DD raises the child. And it causes a really stark lack of communication between parents and child, which is something that we're really trying to break free of. I mean, those are the three big areas I think that we're kind of groundbreaking. At least our institution right now, having 350 kids in 3 years is quite a growth pattern for our area. And you know, looking in the years to come, the biggest challenge that we'll have as an institution is the pressured norms of the region and the culture, meaning people want to go back to conventional means of education rather than an inquiry-based approach. So, you know, it's the continuing, I mean, I'm hearing everybody say, you know, there's a common denominator in these lines where, you know, student voice and choice is really at the leisure of what the institution is prepared to do. And if it's permitted, and if it's granted, and if it's accepted by all stakeholders in the institution, especially including parents and the community in that conversation, then really it's limitless on what can be possible and achieved in school. I mean, I'll share the link of our school in the group chat, but I didn't want to take too much time, but I think that covers a few things that we're interested here, or that we're sharing and doing in Gurgaon, India. Yeah. Thank you for throwing that up. And you'd see here on this website, I know that you're sharing that on the other image there, but much more of this is about where we're innovating, and specifically in our teaching practices. But the goal here is a project-based learning approach is really centered around a question, solving a problem. So, of course, children are going into the government ministry offices here in the local governments. That's pretty common, I think, among most schools that are progressive in nature. But really teaching our children life skills that we think need to be deemed within their own voice. It can't stop. expressions of their work are throughout the building, even if mistakes take place based off the age, the grade and age level. That means if like a KG or a grade 1 child was to write something on, say, the wall in the stairwell as artwork, and they misspelled a word, if that's their current knowledge level, then we don't show artificial work of what the child's not capable of. It's continuing to give those practices, identifying that, you know, schools don't have to be from a traditional method, but really educational institutions. And children need to be represented as the key stakeholder, as they're the end user at the end of the day. Thank you very much. I really appreciate the time, and it's great listening to everyone here. Looking forward to listening to the rest of the conversation.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Kyle. It was really interesting. I think what surprised me the most was this idea that the students pick their teachers and evaluate them. I think I never heard of that before, and so I really love that idea.
Yeah, thanks.
So now we're gonna break up into 2 groups, if it's possible. Let's see if Frederika can manage it. And it's gonna be students on one side and then the adults on the other. And we're gonna discuss these topics and hopefully come to either an agreement or disagreement with the statements. And everybody gets a chance to talk. And then at the end, we're gonna like summarize the groups, what happened in the groups, and see the differences between what students have to say and what adults have to say. So let's see if we can divide the groups now. And be sure to take a picture of this screen in case it goes away.
Of course. All right, more people coming in. You're in Delhi now?
Yes, I'm in Delhi.
Okay. We have a school in Mumbai.
I'm aware. I'll be down in Mumbai in 2 weeks.
Yeah. Let me know, and I'll connect you to our people there. They're also starting a bunch of schools in Chennai.
Yeah. Okay. Great.
Okay. Great.
All right, I'll share the screen again so that we can have a look at the questions that Jordy shared with us. So I think Jordy wanted us to look at the questions and whether we agree or disagree, and then we're all going to go back together as a group and see the difference between what students thought and I guess the adult participants. So the first question is, students at school, do we agree or disagree, and why?
So at our schools, it's a collaborative process about where the interests and needs and choices of students, families, and the adult, the staff person, the teacher, who's the advisor, playing a role in making those decisions. First and foremost, they're based on the interests of each and every student and what's best. So it's agree and disagree is that it's the modality and the way that what schools may be responsible for in terms of content or taught that connect and engage students. So in that sense, it's always about us following our learning goals, which are not the subjects, but thinking like a historian, thinking like a mathematician, thinking like a scientist, communicating in all kinds of ways, traditional and non-traditional, verbal and dance, whatever. So that goes on a learning plan, and that's managed by the student with the support and facilitation of each and every staff person, everybody's schedule and coursework, if you will. Classes are different. Sometimes they come together in small groups, sometimes large. Most of the time they're working independently with people that they choose to work within and outside of school. So agree, disagree, that's the why and the how. There's things that adults are responsible for as well as students, and those things have to align, I would say about that.
Yeah, I agree with you, Elliot. I think it's great to have the opportunity to change your education path the way that your interests lie, but also making sure that, I guess, some of those fundamental subjects are always going to be vital to move on to certain steps and maintaining those in the curriculum are necessary, I think, sometimes, whereas some students may not see, I guess, the long term. Kyle, do you have any thoughts on that one?
Yeah, of course. I think, you know, there's obviously a lot of similarities there between Elliot's answer, and just from a contextual standpoint of our institution. I think it's important for children, you know, first of all, we look at a subject area, project-based learning, the object becomes the subject. So our traditional subject areas are kind of washed out. Child would not go from, you know, English to Hindi to mathematics. It's many times it's actually merged and melded together. But I think in terms of teaching strategy, as well as maybe a learning experience, it's also important that children do things that they don't want to do. It's important to have an experience where, you know, you fail, or it's, you know, nobody likes sitting for a board exam, for example, but you learn a lot about sitting for a 4-hour board exam. In a world today where instant gratification is just crushing the world, you receive answers to everything, you know, instantaneously. The effort of work is still a valuable trait. It doesn't mean putting children through misery, but teaching life lessons through experience. You know, one of those things for us, for example, you know, if children, it's not necessarily a subject area, perhaps academically speaking, but children taking care of the hygiene of the cafeteria, washing tables. Most children in our socioeconomic class in India would not do those things even at home. They would have someone who is a household nanny or servant to take care of those things. So now to have that responsibility, they may not enjoy it, but it's something that if coached properly, they learn a valuable skill and responsibility. So it can't just be what they want to do or what they want to learn. It has to be a match. It has to be a mix. That's what
It's really
I agree with you, and I think, I don't know how it works in different countries, but here in Brazil, we have the subjects at school all decided by the law. I mean, we have a curriculum that must be exposed to children and adolescents, and even if the school has a different method of teach, all schools must to teach this subject that are in the federal law. And so I agree with you about it means how it's going to be, and so yes.
Yeah, I think it's sometimes very difficult to be narrowed down by a curriculum maybe that a nation puts in place. But also I've debated with it a lot as part of my degree, and I think it's also difficult to give some children who then maybe at a school where they think they're doing the right thing and then it doesn't quite work out and they've not followed a curriculum, and those children are then at a disadvantage compared to others, and it's always a hard one to weigh up, I think, isn't it?
Yeah.
Okay, so the next question is, exams and homework are essential for schools and students to progress and learn. Agree or disagree?
Can I go same order?
Sorry?
I said we can go same order. I got a response for this.
Yep.
Right off the bat, you know, it depends on what you're examining and what your homework is. If you're looking at it from a traditional method, you know, I think that all of us face examinations throughout our lives. We just don't think about it from an academic perspective. If I go sit for a job interview, it's actually an evaluation if I'm prepared for this job. That is very much an exam. But the concept of homework itself, I think that homework is essential in terms of reflection on my learning. That doesn't mean do more work. That doesn't mean do more worksheets. What that means is I need to take some time to introspect, maybe converse about what my learning is with my parents, my peers, my friends, and that needs to be done. I need to continue the conversation on my learning outside of the academic day. And that's I think everybody would agree that more work than necessarily, I think research now supports a lot that it's not necessarily a good thing for you.
I definitely think that's a really good point about reflection, and that's how it should be incorporated with homework, because I think it's often used as a way of developing further skills, and if the students don't have the support at home, maybe it's not about learning extra things whilst at home, it's about reflecting on what you have learned that day.
I guess I'll go. So there's exams in the real world that our students take and start to understand that engage them in academic work back at school that may be exams. Exams in schools are set up to sort people basically on a bell curve, on a narrow band of intelligence, period. Create efficiencies in a system, and then winners and losers. So there's a lot of problems with a lot of examinations. In the real world, if a student is engaged, they want to be a fireman, a policeman, a doctor, a dentist, there's exams. If you show those exams that are both written and performance, then they're real, very, very important. Doesn't matter if you want to be an undertaker or a pilot. There's licenses, and it's a license to proceed. And then you play it out the rest of your life to get mastery and get good at it. So those are things that we do at our school. We have no problem engaging students around what they're interested in and then developing the academics that they need to pass the state examinations. We've never had a problem with that, with the exception of sometimes we have to do direct instruction in mathematics because of the way the exams are set up. Homework, we call, is about practice and getting better at the things you want to get better at. Once again, it's the level of engagement around what the work is. That's important, be it a venture, a project, something you want to get better at. We flip homework to work at home or work in and outside of school. It's not given out in any kind of mandatory way. It's that you're engaged and motivated intrinsically and extrinsically to want to do the things that you want to do, get better at them, and meet the people that you want to meet, work with your peers and your family and community around those things. So you're learning all the time. We don't necessarily use that term because it has a meaning of, you got to do this and I don't know why I'm doing it.
Yeah.
Well, you want to do it. Want is a key word. You can be with other people doing it, not just alone. That's not cheating. I mean, all these things are a cuckoo way of doing what we do. So a lot of reframing has to be done around equity and access in exams, what schools are examining students around, and the real world is. It's a complex topic.
Well, and I'm a lawyer, and so I'm not from this educational path, but what I can say that is here in Brazil, we have very different initiatives and with schools that they don't have exams, and they have a different ways to know how children and adolescents are performing, and different forms of evaluation. So I don't think it is essential. And but of course, I agree with you when you say that exams and homework must be very important because they are in real world. And I think all this depends on how it is, how it happens, and how is the relation with the school and the method of school. Because here in Brazil, we have lots of schools with Waldorf method, and they don't have exams, but they have different kinds of homework, and they are very popular here in the country. And so I think it depends the kind of school and how is the method the school uses, and how children and adolescents deal with this. But I don't think it's essential.
Thank you. I think, I don't know, England's also very often pulled forward for the amount that we examine children, and that's definitely one of the reasons that I didn't enjoy teaching primary in England. When you have 7-year-olds getting stressed and crying over an exam, that means absolutely nothing. That's not the point. And I think if you ask in primary anyway, and I'd imagine high school as well, most teachers would be very aware of the progress their students are making and what they're capable of. And I think exams can sometimes underplay some students' progress and overplay others. So I think it's really difficult. But like you say, there's definitely use in them. Okay, and our final question: dress code is necessary in order to have a safe and productive learning environment at school. Agree or disagree?
Absolutely not with that statement.
Yeah, I think the whole group is probably unanimous here. This is kind of an easy one. I think I don't think that dress code, especially for having a conversation about student voice and choice.
Yes.
Yeah. I think so. In England, obviously, we have uniform, and at 16, I went to a different school, and suddenly we had got to choose our own clothing. I remember that finding that very stressful, going from one to the other, because it becomes suddenly what you wear on that first day is your identity then for the next 2 years. But I agree. I don't think having a dress code necessarily results in a safe or more productive learning environment within a school.
Ends the statement that everybody is uniform. It's just standard. We'd say it a little bit differently. The only thing that's the same in school is that they're all different.
Yeah.
And they have to develop. That's our work, the development of the self of each and every individual. And that kind of choice, talk about student choice, that's a big deal. Having said that, there are schools in the United States, just to add the other side, that say kids can't afford clothes and they feel bad if everybody's dressed better than them and all those things. We work in very, very poor communities in the United States. Rarely is that the issue. That's the cop out. So, but that's the counter argument.
I've definitely seen that. I went to private girls' school for high school, and I think on non-uniform day, which we'd get every so often, it very quickly became about what you were wearing and which brand, and I felt the pain of that, and it's not enjoyable. But I think that's also up to the school and the environment that they create of inclusivity, that isn't portrayed as a acceptable behavior. So,
Absolutely.
I'm going to go quickly check in on the other group and see where they're at and see if they're ready to merge back together. So I'll be back in a second. I can figure out how to join the other one.
Okay. Let's go to the next subject, just in case we don't have enough time. And it's dress code. Wait, let me write it again in the chat. Dress code is necessary in order to have a safe and productive learning environment at school. Agree or disagree?
Can you repeat the last part, please?
Dress code is necessary in order to have a safe and productive learning environment at school.
But what is a dress code? Is it a uniform?
We can, in American schools, dress code is you can't wear a skirt that's too short or a shirt that shows too much of your.
Oh, a uniform.
Well, no, because a uniform.
Well, not necessarily uniform. It's more like the way you should show yourself to other people. Like.
Yeah. Okay,
For
I get it.
example, not long hair, not strange colors in your nails, things like that.
Oh, yeah, okay, I get it.
The uniform goes into it. Like, do you think we should have uniforms at school, or everybody should dress how they feel, represents themselves, or whatever you think? Do you want to start, Liana?
Well, yeah, it's a difficult one. I mean, I think it depends a bit on the student, him or herself, because I always were in a school where I had to wear a uniform, and I didn't have a problem with it, especially when I was till because I moved from school until my 12th. I had really a uniform, and everybody was the same, and nobody judged because they couldn't judge. Everybody had the same clothes. And then later on, when I was in high school, it wasn't really a strict uniform. It was just, they said you had to wear blue and white colors. And then it was already, like people could judge more. And that was kind of, it sucks. So.
Yeah, like the good thing about having the uniform is that people can't see your social economic standing, and they can't judge you, exactly like you said. And so in that case, uniforms are great, in my opinion, but at the same time, you can't really express yourself, or you don't have a choice in your clothes. Does anybody else have anything to say? We have to stop in like 5 minutes, but if somebody has something quick to say, please go ahead.
Well, yeah, I do, unless anyone wants to go, but also for me, I've been wearing uniform to school since till I was 16. And then the 2 last years of high school, we were allowed to wear like any type of clothes with no dress code at all. And I found myself that I really missed my uniform, not only because it was easier, of course, in the morning, because you just have one choice and you don't have to think of anything else, but also because it made me feel that I was, if anyone wanted to judge me was because of I was doing, but not because of the things that I was wearing. And also when I was allowed to wear my own.
They're just finishing off. They've taken quite a different stance on the uniform subject so far, so interestingly. So I'll give them 1 more minute and then we can all go back into the main group.
Okay.
Thank you for all joining on your Sunday. I hope it's not broken up your day too much. I'm not quite sure about time zones, but is it early, late?
It's nighttime here.
Oh, okay. Hope not too late.
Yeah, it's 9:30 at night here.
Oh, right. Okay. Well, let's try and round this off so you can get some rest before work Monday.
Okay, yeah, it's okay.
Okay, I'm going to join us all together now if I can.
Okay, welcome back, everybody. My team, sorry, I didn't get to say that the group was closing.
Oh, sorry. It jumped through.
But so what do you think if we'll go statement by statement, and then one student from my group will say what we discussed, and then one person from the other group will say what they discussed, and then we'll go to the next statement. So let's start with students should choose their own subjects at school. Frederika, choose somebody to talk in your group.
I think Elliot, you had you started the conversation on this one. Would you like to take this one? Or
Go ahead, please.
sorry, that was unmuted. You say I should summarize. Sorry.
Somebody else. Yeah, that's all right.
Okay. So students should choose their own subjects at school. I think we said, I think we came somewhere in the middle. So saying that there should be a lot of personalized learning and students should be allowed and encouraged to shape their educational journey, but that there's also a lot of value in certain subjects in the long scheme, and that sometimes we have to take subjects that maybe we don't enjoy as much, and we have to push ourselves to work hard at those, and that's a good lesson for life as well. And it's about open communication between the educator and the students about what the best journey for that person or that student might be, in order to make their educational journey as progressive and as useful to them as possible for their future.
Okay. I'm gonna ask Carola to summarize what we talked about. Is Carola still here?
Yeah, I'm here. Well, yeah, the question was, students should choose their own subjects at school. Agree or disagree? Why? Well, most of us thought that it should be like really balanced. Like students should be well, students should have a voice in the decision making of their student plan. And I think no one said that students shouldn't choose their own subjects at school. There was also, I think, Jordy, could you help me?
Okay. Well, it was kind of a mix between that it's important to have the foundations to be exposed to enough material to know later on how to use them and know if you want to go into those fields or not, or learn more about them. But also it's important to follow what you're interested in. So like maybe start with elementary with the basics, maybe middle school, but then in high school really allow the students to start, expressing themselves and choosing what they want to do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and choosing the subjects in order to what they want to do in the future.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and so the next statement, exams and homework are essential for schools and students to progress and learn. So what do the educators have to say about this?
So I think we were saying that there's definitely over homework and over examination in education. However, obviously towards medical law exams in the future, that's something that we have to be ready to work with and have to be able to do. And it's about making sure that the exams that are being done are valuable and measuring the correct aspects of education, and that homework is reflection and practicing rather than students maybe trying to learn new things on their own, where they may lack support at home or struggle and then find homework very daunting. Anyone else, if you want to add anything, then please do. Sorry, Carl, I think you're muted.
Thanks, guys.
Sorry.
No, the only thing I would add to that, I think that's actually a pretty good synopsis. But homework really is you need to reflect on your learning. You need to spend time to think about what you're doing and why you're doing it. And typically, homework is thought as a drill and kill. I do worksheet over worksheet. More work is better, but there's not a lot of thought done. Why am I doing this, and why is this important? And so an element of introspection with classmates and then with non-key stakeholders in your learning is equally important. I think we all agree with this question and the question before. It really determines then how you want to define the terminology, right? If how you want to define a subject, or how do you want to define an exam. Or, these words are being redefined in education globally. I think that's what you're going to find for a lot of this dialogue.
Great, thank you.
Okay.
How about you guys, Jordy?
Carolina, do you want to summarize?
Yeah. Okay, so about exams, we said that if we take exams as a way to make the sorry, I have to clear my mind because I made my notes in Spanish and now I have quite a mess here. Yeah, basically, if you take the exams as something useful for you so that you can learn from them, but you don't feel that exams are something you must do, and something that can also be a matter of exclusion or exclusion between people, like people who doesn't reach certain level and people who reach it, or people who go above it or anything. So as long as we take exams as a proof for our own our own knowledge, then it's fine. And so we are talking about something complementary to the other education parts that are involved in the whole process. And so also about homework, we said basically that the things you take home are because you want to reflect on them, as Kyle said, and you want to go deeper into the things that you already learned at school. So you don't find homework as same as exams. You don't find they are an obligation or something you must do, but they just flow naturally, and you find them useful, and you appreciate that they are there. But as long as you find something as an obstacle, then it should not be that way. I don't know if it's clear. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I think that was a pretty good summary.
Can I add something?
Yes, please.
Well, Jordy said that talked about the project-based learning and how students start to think they're learning. It stops being homework because they're so passionate about what they're learning and they want to learn more and more, that they can study at 2 a.m. or something and it's still fun. Yeah. I think, yeah, that's it. Carolina summarized everything.
Thank you. Okay, next subject.
Sorry. Is it school workers or the youth's work? So there's a nice expression that says, as mastery is foregrounded, the clock recedes.
Mm-hmm.
About what your work is and how much time you're going to put in, but where time is not the indicator of success. So that's what you want to kind of approach. That involves everything from talking to other people, to reflection, to trial and error, figuring things out. So once it becomes to the theme of the call here, the students' work and not schoolwork on some kind of continuum, that's the direction that we'd like to head in.
Yeah, exactly. I think I used big picture as the example.
I think you did too. You were channeling us a little bit there.
Yeah, you felt it. Okay, so the next one is dress code is necessary in order to have a safe and productive learning environment in school. So Frederika.
I'll try to do a quick summary again. I think we're all of the mindset that dress code isn't necessary in order to create a safe and productive learning environment. We looked at different arguments, such as the fact that maybe students might feel so there's the argument that socioeconomic background can influence what people wear and create a climate of, I guess, bullying maybe, or where students feel uncomfortable. But I think we're of the mindset that dress code itself does not have an influence on a safe and productive learning environment. And I myself have had a uniform and not had a uniform. And I remember the stress of the first time swapping, but I don't think my learning was that heavily influenced by what I was wearing. But it'd be interesting to see what you guys were talking about, because I know you came up with some different discussions and arguments.
Okay, I'm gonna ask Juanfe to please tell us what we said.
Yeah, sure. Okay, so about the dress code. Well, first of all, we say that it could be considered like as a tool the students could use to like have good relations with the students, because with that they are not gonna judge you because of how you look like. If they say something to you, an opinion, or maybe you should improve this, is because of what you're doing, not how do you look. So that's the point of it. And as well is because the uniform gives you kind of identity. That means that all the people that is there is because they are agreeing with what they are doing. They are in that group, and they're being part to sit in a big contest of a family, like all their students of the same school. So it's like we are here, and we need to take care of each other. We just need to focus on what we are doing. That's the only thing that's important. By the other hand, we also discussed that in one point it could be a kind of difficult because, yeah, it's important to have something in common, but as well something different from each other. So maybe with a dress code, sometimes it's not that easy to show the others like how your differences are your strong points. So yeah, sometimes it will be kind of difficult to express yourself. So yeah, the dress code has it goes good things. That will be like the summarize of what we were talking about.
Yeah, it was interesting because we talked about uniforms specifically, and it's just the idea that it creates a sense of community, and like you said, you don't get this like socioeconomic differences, which are pretty obvious with the clothes usually, and so like the two students who said they wore uniforms said that they felt very comfortable in their uniform, and that when they were out of the uniform, it felt very awkward and like they couldn't, that they were being judged by their clothes rather than what they were doing. That's it.
I just want to add something because I couldn't say my opinion in that case.
Oh, yeah.
In my case, I feel that uniform is necessary, but it's also like a protection, like makes you feel that the world is judging you all the time. I remember when I changed school that I also now I didn't feel right with using my clothes because, well, I remember in my school that all my friends feel more comfortable with the uniform because they are insecure of themselves, to show themselves in the school, to be more to notice because of the uniform. And that's why I think I have like a controversial opinion, because they also make you feel comfortable, like we are the same and we only care our actions, but also makes you feel that why we need to be the same, why you are afraid to look different when you are out of high school. And that's like why I'm like controversial. When also now I feel that uniform makes me feel more comfortable because I don't need to be like judgment, but I think makes you I don't know how to say, like low esteem sometimes because of yourself, to show yourself. That's why I have a controversial opinion, but that's all.
Thank you, Monse. Yeah, we didn't have enough time to get all the opinions on that one. So this has been interesting to see like the different sides. Does anybody have anything that came up, some thought that came up, or something that you thought was interesting in comparison between like the adults and the students? Or were you expecting the answers that you heard?
Well, I think I have a new point that didn't came up when we were having the conversation, the little conversation group. That is, yeah, a pro is that you can't be judged by your economic or social background, but shouldn't we, oh well, shouldn't children or everyone should be empathic with who you really are, like accepting everyone. Like in real life, you won't have a uniform, or maybe in some works you will, but most of times you will only wear a uniform at the school. So I think now my opinion is that everyone shouldn't judge other people by how they look. And it could be like when they're children, they can have this approach to accept people just like how they are. And yeah, that's it.
It's beautiful. Thank you, Carla.
You're welcome.
Okay, we need to move on from this subject. I'm sorry, Juanfe.
Yeah.
So unless anybody has anything else to say about what they discovered in this last discussion, then we'll have Frederika say the last thoughts. Okay, go ahead, Frederika.
Just realized I was on mute again. I just want to say thank you so much for everyone putting the time aside to join today. I know everyone has very different time zones and it's your weekend, so we're very grateful, and it's been really interesting, both from the research point of view, and I know Jordy and everyone else who's led this call has really enjoyed hearing everyone else's feedback. And thank you to all the students who've joined today. And for the students, if you're interested in joining our Youth Academy, I'd love to have you on board. I'm sure Jordy could share the link for that, or it's also on our website. It'd be great to have your feedback generally on innovations, and invite you to our summit. And yeah, thank you so much, and I hope everyone enjoys the rest of their Sunday if there's still some time left. Is there any other things you needed to add, Jordy, at the end?
No, I think that's it. It's been a wonderful experience. I think it's really opened my horizons, and it's been a wonderful learning experience. And so thank you all for joining us and sharing your thoughts and opinions towards this subject.
Thank you.
Yes, thanks for the invitation as well. It was like the first time I an activity like this, so it was quite interesting. So thanks a lot for the invitation.
Yes, thank you.
And thank you to our 3 speakers today as well, for sharing about your work. It was really interesting. So thank you again, and hopefully we'll all be in contact soon. Did you have something to say, Elliot? Sorry? No. Perfect. Okay. Have a great evening or afternoon, everyone. Bye.
You too. Bye.
Bye-bye.